Quickly, there's a crisis at the American border with Mexico, Arizona to Texas. Tens of thousands of minors, many unaccompanied by adults, are crowding, rushing the border. The Border Patrol, ICE, is overwhelmed. There's not enough space. They don't have facilities. In addition, there's a wrinkle in our law that you can't turn children back if they don't come from Mexico. You've got to transport them to their country of origin. You've got to verify all this. There are a lot of details here, but you certainly have read, all of you, about the crisis at the border. There's no one cause. There's no one solution. I'm told, however, it will continue. So my professionals are here to comment on immigration because it's a problem for both parties. It's a problem for all parts of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branch. I'm joined here by Thaddeus McCotter of WJR, who's just arrived from doing television in New York. He's in studio with me. Good evening, Mr. McCotter.
Good evening, Mr. Batchelor.
And John Fund in California on the West Coast, and David Drucker in Washington. So I begin with each of you to observe the immigration nightmare right now on the border and how the federal government is responding to it and how the parties are. You choose. John, I'll start with you in California because you're close to the trouble out there with these flood of children. Is this a bigger problem for the Obama administration, for the president, for the Republicans in the House and their struggles to put together immigration reform? Or is this a matter of money being allocated and the administration having the policy in hand and they haven't solved it? John.
I'm standing 10 miles from where the Mexican border begins, and the conversation out here is very simple. We knew there was going to be an explosion at some point. We just didn't know when, and we wondered how long Washington was going to stick its head in the sand and pretend that this problem could be fixed with border enforcement only and, a rush to hasten citizenship. I think this sets back the cause of immigration reform dramatically because it just shows that they can be overwhelmed by events and by bad actors like the drug cartels. I mean, the border conflict is tied to the war on drugs. Both of them are failures. Mr.
Drucker, right now in Washington, Lordy, there's enough to concentrate on, and the Republicans have just gone through a ripping controversy with the loss of Mr. Cantor and the election now of a new majority leader and new whip. And immigration reform was in the front of the Republican Party as recently as 2 weeks ago. Is it now? And is this what is described to me swarm at the border of unaccompanied Central American minors? Is this making it less or more likely that the Republicans can move?
It's making it less likely that anybody's going to move, in particular the Republicans. They're more convinced than ever that you need to secure the border first before you do anything about the 11 to 13 million illegal immigrants currently living in the country. They blame the Obama administration for enticing them here because of, rumors that he's going to do some sort of executive authority amnesty of some sort, and they're all rushing here to get in, before the stroke of midnight. And both sides are dug in. Republicans want a whole lot of security. Democrats want a whole lot of legalization. And you have these screamers on both sides who don't want to really let anything happen unless they only get their own way, which is completely impossible in a Senate where it takes 60 votes to do anything, let alone who the president is and who controls the House.
Thaddeus, the recent polling shows that the president suffers more on immigration than even foreign policy right now. His approval rating is at 37%, well below his approval for economy, which is poor, and the foreign policy, which is poor. His overall approval rating is 41, tying his lowest ever. Suddenly, the White House is being blamed for the failure of immigration. Is that just?
Well, I think that as our guests, Mr. Drucker and Mr. Fund, have pointed out, this is a problem for the parties, for the country. And it is a disparate, distinct thing that each side wants. So everybody now can be dissatisfied and blame the president, unlike other issues where there may be one side or the other and he can make one side happy. He has so many moving parts to this, so many moving coalitions, so many issues that it is just so much frustration that it's easier for him to be the lightning rod that attracts it all. I think that in terms of the parties themselves, as Mr. Fund has pointed out, what you're going to see is the involvement of the cartels, as reported, with this use of children is going to make it much easier for Republicans to sell border security than it is going to be to accommodate a deal between border security and hastened legalization.
Mr. Fund, my memory of the formula was that the president saw this as a winner for the Democrats at the midterm because if the Republicans can't solve it, they'll be faulted. And they'll especially be faulted in the move towards the Democratic side for the 2016 election. Is that still in place? Is this a winner for the president?
Not if there's chaos at the border, and notice how the government has refused to let anyone film these children or the conditions that they're in. They're basically in lockdown. I think chaos at the border hurts the president. It gives him the sense that he's not in control of both foreign policy and border policy and domestic policy. Chaos does not help the president's party in the fall.
Mr. Drucker, we've talked before about the Republicans' need to answer immigration and those who are here legally, those who are not here with documentation for the 2016 cycle. I think the short way of saying it is that the Republicans will be condemned forever as a minority party. This particular issue of the swarming at the border and the tragedy of the unaccompanied children who've been misled or abused, is this what the president plans? Is this the idea that the president can always win on immigration and the Democrats can as well?
Well, I think that long term the issue is still one that the Republicans need to solve politically. But in the short and medium term, if the border, I agree with John, if the border is overwhelmed and the administration or any administration can't sell the idea that the border is actually secure, so I don't know why Republicans keep on insisting on all of this border security in exchange for legalization, then it hurts their cause and it removes, at least in the short to medium term, the political potency of immigration vis-a-vis helping the Democrats and hurting the Republicans.
Thaddeus, two of the strongest voices in the Republican Party for 2016, Jeb Bush of Florida, Marco Rubio of Florida, have both spoken out repeatedly and at some cost for immigration reform. This phenomena, this tragedy at the border, does that make it less likely that they'll be heard for the 2016 cycle?
No, I think that what you're seeing is the reality that everybody wants immigration reform. It's just a question of what form it takes. And something's going to need to be done because, as everyone has pointed out, the real people right now who are in the most jeopardy and who the hearts go out to the most are those children who are being abused and exploited by the cartels.
Right. We've got a mess at the border and we can't solve it. The ICE is overwhelmed. I'm going to take a report next from Nogales, but I thank you, gentlemen, right now. Immigration is not a winner for either party, is what I'm hearing. We've got to solve this present tragedy before we can get back to policy. Thaddeus McCotter of WJR here in my studio in New York. Thank you, Thaddeus. John Funden, National Review Online on the West Coast. David Drucker in his roost in Washington, D.C., the Washington Examiner. His story on the Oklahoma primary soon enough. I'm John Batchelor.